Welcome to another episode of the Millennium Live Leadership and Discovery Podcast, where we're diving deep into the world of data, movement, and AI innovation. This episode is brought to you by Fivetran, the industry leader in data movement, powering real-time analytics, AI workflows, cloud migrations, and much, much more. And we'll be diving into that in this episode. And joining the podcast to help us discover how Fivetran is revolutionizing the data integration landscape, assisting thousands of global brands like Conde Nast, JetBlue, and Morgan Stanley, few names that you'll hear in this episode, to help them harness their data to fuel analytics, drive operational efficiencies, and power AI innovations. We have Taylor Brown. He's the co-founder and chief operating officer of Fivetran. Taylor, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here and have a good conversation with you. Of
Connor, thanks for having me on. Very excited about today's episode.
course, man. So a little bit for the audience and just a little brief about what we will be diving into. Of course, got to discuss the latest trends in data management and that are shaping the future, like AI, and how Fivetran is really simplifying the complex data integrations, making it easier for companies to focus on high-value data initiatives. And of course, discuss those challenges and opportunities in data management, specifically for our C-suite members and leaders out there, and what lies ahead for Fivetran. So if those topics are top of mind for you, then you are in the right place, listening to the right episode. And Taylor, I want to dive in right off the bat about Fivetran, about the mission, about the problems that you're trying to solve, about how you're a leader in this space when it comes to data integration and migration. So if you can give us a little overview about Fivetran, that'll be a great way to start.
Yeah, that sounds good. So George, my co-founder and our CEO, started Fivetran roughly 12 years ago. And our mission is to make access to data as simple and reliable as electricity. We like to talk about, the mission because I think it really, directs the work that we're doing. And I think the reason that we like electricity so much is that when you think about Thomas Edison bringing the light bulb into the house and bringing electricity into the house at the turn of the century, it was all about the light bulb, right? And everyone thought like, okay, we're just going to have light in all the houses. But as soon as this electricity, was brought into the wall, all of a sudden there's an explosion of all these other innovations of vacuum cleaners and hair dryers and washing machines, and then all the electronics. And I think that's kind of where we are. Like, we are at the light bulb stage of data. And so, what we're trying to do is just make it extremely easy for our companies and organizations to have access to all of their data across their entire company. And so what Fivetran does is we're the global leader in data movement. As you mentioned earlier, we help customers use their data to power everything from AI applications, ML models, predictive analytics, and operational workloads. We have the largest catalog of fully managed data sources. And essentially, we automate the movement of data from all these different places in a code-free way directly into our customers, central data warehouse or data lake. We do support, like some of the applications that we support are like SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Workday, 500 others. And we see ourselves as the one place for every organization to centralize their data in near real time for all the different applications that I mentioned. And as you talked about, there are some thousands of customers using us today, like Conde Nast and JetBlue, Morgan Stanley, and a bunch of other other good ones. And I think that is like really what Fivetran is focused on for the last 12 years. And I think finally we're data is the lifeblood of like every company in terms of their future innovation. And so we make it dead simple for companies to access and leverage this critical asset for brands of all sizes. And then we can talk about how how we apply some of this stuff around AI.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that with you, Taylor, and especially about how data is the future of innovation, but AI seems to be taking over all the talk today, and it's sort of the biggest topic on everybody's mind. AI and
For sure.
what Gen AI can do, and For C-suite leaders especially, and for this audience in particular, who are listening to this podcast, they're looking for new ways to innovate with these types of technologies. They're looking for solutions. And so, what are some of the emerging trends in data management that you believe is really going to shape the future of AI and the possibilities that are around Gen AI?
Yeah, so I think when AI obviously is the hottest topic on everyone's mind these days, and I think when especially senior leaders are thinking about AI, they're thinking about the pitfalls of hallucinations and the capabilities and the end state and how's that going to change their workforce. And there's a lot of I'd say downstream effects of AI from where we sit, but from where we sit, which is sort of in the infrastructure layer of data. Like at the end of the day, AI runs on top of data, and your infrastructure for centralizing and moving this data is ultimately the thing that drives your AI platform. It also is the thing that drives your BI platform, and it drives the innovation at your organization. And so I think where we are today looks similar to where we looked around like BI and analytics maybe 15 years ago, where companies were like rushing around saying, I really need dashboards and I need to go get all this data and I don't know how to get it. And so I'm just going to, share a bunch of spreadsheets everywhere. And there's really no way to have any governance on it. And there's no real understanding in terms of what people are looking at. And we're just sharing everything. And so it's sort of this crazy time. And that is the same thing that's happened within AI. And I think that, the infrastructure around AI actually looks a lot like the infrastructure around BI. There has been, like, I'm going to go sort of into the history, and so the thing that I think is important is sort of how the infrastructure works around AI and BI and why that's important for companies to invest in it. If you look at a brief history of data warehousing. So for those of you who don't really know, data warehouse is like a central repository where you move data into it. It's a column store database ultimately that ideally for BI workloads and sort of aggregations, it's very fast and easy to query. And so if you think about the initial data warehouses were on-premise databases, and database has ultimately a compute layer and a storage layer, and you sort of throw a bunch of data into the storage layer, and then you have a finite amount of compute that you can run on top of it. And so this is where a lot of businesses have come from. They're using Netezza or Vertica or Greenplum, and so that is where the original data warehouses were, or even Oracle. And then everyone, what happened is that the cloud sort of took over in 2013, 14, 15. You have companies like Snowflake that joined the market. What Snowflake's big innovation is that they have a single system that separates compute from storage, so that now instead of being limited by how much you could scale your overall data platform out, you now can say, hey, I can scale endlessly, right? I can store as much data as AWS can store, and I can query it with as much compute as AWS will allow us to purchase. And it was this really big change in the market. But I think the sort of the change from there is that that's like one side, right? That's like the BI side. On the data lake side, data lakes are this concept where you just take a ton of data and you put it into a single repository, and it's not really organized. Where your BI stuff is much more organized. Your data lakes are much more, I'd say, like a data swamp, right? It's more like Hadoop, and a lot of the early 2000 sort of just dumping grounds where you take all your files, your photos, your PDFs, whatever, you dump it in there. And then a lot of folks would then build their AI platforms on top of that. And what has effectively happened is that over time, the AI sort of folks and machine learning and data scientists and the BI sort of folks are like, hey, I wish we just had one platform. Like, wouldn't it be great if we could just have one system that we could do all of this? And so we don't have to have both of these. And so what's sort of happened in the last year is that these open file formats called Iceberg or Delta from Databricks have an Iceberg, which is largely supported by a large open source community, have created the ability for us to take this separation of compute and storage one step further, where you basically you can store all your data in S3 or a low level storage layer on Amazon, and then you can query it within Databricks or within Snowflake or within any of the other Redshift, or the other downstream consumers. And this separation provides a lot of both control and long-term future proofing for every organization, but it also unifies building a single data platform for both AI and for your BI workloads. And what we've seen is the customers that are doing building this single platform, they're just much faster at innovating around AI because they have access to everything. They have the governance in place. They have the whole infrastructure already built, and they're using it largely for their internal analytics, for their business analytics. But then they realize like, oh, I can go and use this for various different AI workloads. So that's the thing that we're seeing a whole lot of right now. And it's an exciting time in the space because this new separation with data lakes is really is very cutting edge and very exciting to be part of.
It is. It is certainly an exciting time, Taylor, and with new technologies, it's only going to honestly, the future does look pretty exciting. And I'm looking forward to seeing where AI could take the industry, and where we're heading. Is probably something that I could ask next in terms of the enterprise. Uh, a lot of questions around AI is how to successfully enable it and integrate it. And really, when it comes to deploying AI successfully, there are certain steps that enterprises should definitely take and assess and when it comes to their readiness for AI and these future tools that they can deploy. So how can they really assess their readiness for AI tools, and how can they ensure that their data infrastructure that they currently have in place supports these initiatives effectively?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think before we dive into to say to explain, are they really ready? What I will say is that again, everyone has been thinking about this, and we actually we partnered with MIT and surveyed a couple hundred C-level executives and data executives around their priorities. And what we found out was that like over 80%, I think it was 82-ish% of the folks we surveyed said AI was their, and Gen AI and creating business value from this was their top highest priority. And then 60% said that data integration was the top investment priority for AI and Gen AI, like just getting the data together. And a lot of them, cited the fact that they had hundreds of different locations they were getting data from. They had hundreds of different ideas in terms of what they wanted to do with that data. And so I think I point this out just to say everyone's thinking about this. And, and as I was saying prior, I think the folks that are most advanced are the ones that have built out a highly advanced data platform. And I think it's sort of funny, we were at a customer advisory board last fall, and we had a large, payments company we were working with. It was at the customer advisory board, and they said it's sort of interesting because they went to their board to ask for budget for a data platform, and the board said no, there's no budget for data platforms. And they said, okay, well, can I get budget? They're like, but we have unlimited budget for AI platforms. And the funny thing about that is they're like, look, the data platform is the platform. So he just went back, changed the proposal, and said okay, I'm looking for an AI data platform. And they're like, okay, absolutely. And and the point there is that I think a lot of people just don't understand the fact that your data infrastructure, how you're getting data together, how you're governing it, how you're providing access, what you're loading back in for BI, what you're then loading into vector databases for AI type workloads. That's all just back to the basics of your infrastructure. And so I think you should take a hard look at what does your infrastructure look like? Do you have a central data platform that you've decided to centralize on, that you're using a data lake for, or a data warehouse like like Databricks or like Snowflake or like Redshift or BigQuery. If you don't have any of these, like I think it's worth really taking a look at, okay, let's implement the basics before we start to move on to the advanced sort of AI workloads. Because I think the folks that try and jump straight from spreadsheets to advanced AI don't necessarily have a whole lot of success. Whereas the ones that build out like, hey, let's walk before we run. Let's get a more modern data stack around our own internal analytics and data platform, then are the ones that are more successful. And so, like an example of a customer who came to us who was, I would say, more on their heels initially, but really investing a lot in data was Saks, the luxury retailer. And they came to build a unified strategy and data platform with Fivetran, and they found a whole lot of success with it. And they really rebuilt everything on top of Fivetran and Snowflake, and it gave them, I would say, a pretty big advantage over the luxury retailers that they were competing with. And what they did was not only they build a full BI platform on top of it that they're running all of their day-to-day analytics and predictive analytics on, but then they started using AI and LLMs to deliver personalized recommendations to customers via their call center agents, and then strengthening relationships and creating I would say unparalleled shopping experiences for their customers within their applications. And this all happened through just updating and rebuilding and rethinking how their data platform works. And so I think that's a good example of what's possible when you just rethink about the right and you update your infrastructure basically.
So really, when it all comes together, AI readiness comes down to data readiness, to put it simply.
Basically, exactly.
So
That's exactly it.
yeah, Taylor, something that I want to bring up something that you mentioned earlier, in about the second question, and you mentioned data lakes, and data lakes have generated significant hype in recent years, and you know this, being
Yeah,
in your shoes over at Fivetran. So many enterprises though are facing the harsh realities of implementing and maintaining
totally.
data lakes. So could you discuss some of the challenges, some of the pitfalls that companies have associated with data lakes, and really how Fivetran is helping organizations navigate these issues when it
Mhm.
comes to achieving their data goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think again back to the sort of the history of data lakes, this idea of data lakes is very appealing, which is you have a data lake is sort of this place where you can just dump all this data, and then you can query and run whatever you need on top of it. The reality is building a full AI or ML or any even analytics structure on top of a data lake in the previous generation was very expensive. And so it was only the largest companies that could afford to do it. They take a ton of data, they dump it into a data lake, or like on S3 or on Hadoop. And then the problem with them is it's really more like a data swamp. So it take snapshots. You take all of your data from one day and you just put it in there every single night. So you end up with a ton of duplicative data. You end up doing a whole lot of data processing, and it's very complex. And all this results in you finally getting some sort of AI model out on top of it, right? But the costs were massive, and so it's very cost prohibitive for most companies to really build these things out. And what has happened now, but that was the key to actually building any sort of Gen AI type workloads. I think now with the sort of push towards AI with ChatGPT coming out and the whole world sort of shifting towards it, the needs have increased, but and as a result of that, some of the technology is updated as well. So now, what I would call a modern data lake is a data lake where you load the data instead of being completely unstructured and complete data mess, data swamp, it's actually structured. And so what the data warehouses that I talked about earlier, they're column stores, they're very structured, and that's what makes them great from a database perspective. But they don't necessarily allow all of the file formats and unstructured and ownership that you get in a classic data lake. And so with these new file formats like Iceberg, you sort of get the best of both worlds. The data is actually structured in a way which you can update it and which doesn't become a data swamp, but it's within your own S3 or your own data lake, which I think is, while it seems like a small thing, is actually a very big advance in the market. Now, the challenge is actually updating those files in like an ACID compliant file format, like into Iceberg, is actually quite complicated and hard to do. And so what Fivetran, and our customers have been asking for this for a number of years. And so what Fivetran, what we launched 2 weeks ago was our managed data lake service, which it takes all 500 plus connectors that we have in a highly automated way. And you can just, decide, hey, I want to load this to a data lake in Iceberg or Delta. And it's fully organized, and then we update the tables and everything for you. So you get basically a fully managed data lake in a matter of clicks. And I think that is the thing that we're already seeing a tremendous amount of excitement in the market from. So for example, Lyra Health, which is it's a leading provider in workforce mental health benefits, has already set this up. They're seeing, and part of the reason they set it up was around security and scalability and flexibility and sort of future proofing, and having all the data, within an area where they could build, on top of it with their engineering teams, but they didn't have to manage all of the integrations. And so, we've designed and we've built this, and we're, again, already seeing a ton of success on top of it. And so I don't, hopefully that gives a little bit of an overview for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to actually dive into a few examples of where Fivetran really has had success in transforming business operations. And this is kind of my favorite part of the podcast, is when we get to discuss those use cases and those success stories. So I would love if we mentioned a couple of big brands at the beginning of the podcast, but if you could share some innovative use cases of data and analytics that have really significantly transformed the enterprise and successfully for your customers, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Let me dig into a couple of them. So I'll start with the company that's been a customer of ours for many years now, called Cemex. Cemex, for those of you who don't know, is the 5th largest cement company in the world, and they have used Fivetran to move their sales and commercial data from SAP into Snowflake, and it's reduced their processing time from weeks to near real time. So one of the biggest benefits was, they had a ton of data, and they still have a ton of data in SAP, but they had no real way to action it. They were getting data out on a daily or like weekly or sometimes even monthly basis, and they found it very difficult to get that data into Snowflake, and especially for their international businesses, because they have businesses all around the world. And so we helped take data at SAP, load it into Snowflake for them, and they've achieved 90% reduction in manual data work, and minimize the large amount of like teams and consultants that they had moving this data in a much more manual way to a fully automated replication of that data through Fivetran, which enabled over 10,000 employees to have basically real-time or near real-time data access, and drive the key decisions across the organization. And what they're looking at, like in terms of the data that they're like the types of data that they're looking at, is that they're closely tracking their carbon emissions, water usage, and a bunch of other like sustainability KPIs across the various like global facilities. And some of that is quite complicated because they're pulling together a bunch of different data sets. And so this is like one of the key areas that they've achieved a whole lot of success. let's talk about JetBlue as well. So for those of you who don't know JetBlue, JetBlue is obviously a large airline in the United States and globally, and they use Fivetran for database replication to build near real time insights, or to drive more global operations, to drive the more efficient global operations. They're operating basically 24/7, and they generate a ton of data for every flight. And their legacy data infrastructure really struggled to keep up and was really delayed in terms of key insights, and it was hard for them to manage the business, especially the operational day-to-day pieces of the business without more real-time access to data. And so they modernized their infrastructure and their data platform using Fivetran. And we're replicating the aircraft maintenance data from their on-premise systems into Snowflake, and allowing them to build predictive models for maintenance and cost improvements. And then we also integrate a ton of their various like SaaS sources, like their cloud sources like Qualtrics or ServiceNow or Jira or Concur or Salesforce, which really drive each of those different areas or business units. And we load all of that into Salesforce or into Snowflake for them as well. So that's another exciting one. LVMH is another one, which for those of you who don't know, LVMH is like Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and they have over 75 of, I would say, the most, I don't know, probably the most notable brands on the planet. And they require near real-time access to retail and customer data. And they standardize the entire, like all of the brands on Fivetran and Google BigQuery. So that's really their data platform. And they've connected over 15 of their brands or maisons, and set up over 250 different connectors, types of connectors across all of those. And so a lot of this is like you can imagine they have a ton of marketing data, a ton of ad data, a ton of SAP data. And we can use, we're the one tool or platform that they're using to replicate everything into BigQuery, and then they're using BigQuery to drive all of their data platform and their analytics, and they have basically near real time access to that data without needing a ton of data engineers, which I think has been a huge success for that organization. And then last is Conde Nast. Conde Nast, the media conglomerate, faces lots of challenges because they have tons of different media data across multiple different touch points. And they implemented Fivetran a few years ago, and they were really looking to build a sort of a 360-degree view of their customers, and create models for, at this point, trillions of data points, for now, which they like monetize through trusted audience segments. So like there's sort of a ton of data across all of a ton of different platforms pulled together. Then they're building these kind of custom audience segments that they're then like marketing different data back out to, or different stories back out to. So so those are just a few of the different examples across each of them. As you can see, we have customers pretty much every vertical, and every industry across the board. And I think these are just a few of the great ones.
Yeah, I'm 100%. I mean, huge brands, from airlines to food and beverage, to media. I think it's worth noting that those real-time insights are certainly a game changer, and you're going to see with the ability that Fivetran has to offer, it's just unlike anything else right now in the industry. So, Taylor, this is really awesome, and I think it'd be a great time to get your kind of your thoughts on the industry as a whole. And we talked a lot about kind of the trends that we're seeing, especially in AI, and there's a lot of opportunities that are coming along with AI and the different technology and the different data platforms, where and sort of where companies are in their process and their migration to the cloud, because we got to look at that too. But
Mhm.
would love to know your thoughts on, kind of the broader industry as a whole of what you see, being in the industry expert that you are, biggest challenges and some of the biggest opportunities in data management for that enterprise level, that C-suite, that listener of this podcast, that's going to be happening in the next few years.
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess I'll start with the opportunities. I would say that in the 1990s ish, when the first real databases were starting to be used as data warehouses, everyone really wanted what's available today. So people are like, I really want to load everything. I want it to be, super fast. I want it to be able to, to use the same data for different workloads. There's all these things that people really wanted back then. And I think every 10 years, everyone thought like, oh yeah, we've got, the innovation in technology has gotten us there. We're there, right? And so it's like early 2000s, there was a big set of changes, but they didn't really get us that much closer. Then, early 2010s, like, okay, we got a little bit closer when the cloud really like pushed us way forward towards that. And I think now with AI, like basically like building enterprise ready data platform has never been easier with the technology that we have. And all the folks that really wish that they could do this 30 years ago, like who really couldn't because either the technology was a constraint or financially it was a constraint, like all of that is really pushed aside now. Like tiny companies can build extremely advanced AI platforms and data platforms, and so can really large organizations. And so like
Right.
that's the thing that's most exciting to me. But of course, you sort of have to lean into the technology, like in terms of cloud, in terms of AI, in terms of your like data integration and data platform. Like if you don't lean into those, like you're not getting the step function, the step up that allows uh, for the like extreme use of your overall data and of this critical asset that companies have. So I think that is like the thing that's most exciting. And obviously, like the AI wave has been really fun to see. The amount of energy put into it. I think it's still early days where we haven't necessarily even seen the sort of outcomes from it. It's probably like early days of the internet when
Yeah.
everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, the internet's this great thing. I can communicate over it, or I can like put up a web page, right?" But then all of a sudden, you start to have social media, and you start to have like all these other types of experiences that no one could ever think about. And I think we're like at those first early days of AI. We're like, "Oh, I have this cool chatbot. Like that's great, awesome." But like, there's so many other ways that it can be, that it can be helpful that we haven't even really quite figured out. So I think that's the thing that's really most exciting. I think the challenges are aligned with that, which is, hey, like especially for some of the larger organizations, changing technology is really challenging, right? There's a lot of inertia that you get when you have these big old legacy systems, and changing those systems and changing the way in which you approach those systems from a human perspective is really complicated, right? Like some people, we'll move mainframes from customers who have data that was set up in the 50s and the 60s. And it's like, those systems are still in place and still like core to the operations of those businesses. And so, they're not going to change overnight. Right. And I think, figuring out like that's okay. I think for those of you who are listening, like my suggestion would be, think through, what are the small things you can start with? Are there ways that you can get data out of some of these core systems and into a more modern infrastructure without, deprecating these older systems if you need to, and sort of get one foot in and start to build a little momentum and show some business success with the organization, before you really dive in and go, fully into a modern platform. So those are things like that really come to mind for me. And I just say for everyone, like, uh, I would say invest in your overall data and data platform. Invest in using your data as an asset. And if you do that, like you will continue to innovate, I believe, and stay ahead of the curve in all of your competitive, sort of across your competitive landscape.
Yeah, of course. Well, you know, Taylor, I can't let you go without asking you at least one more question. And I like to end the podcast. That was kind of nice. You made that nice futuristic, which I appreciate. But Fivetran it sounds like a remarkable company. Congratulations on 12 years and counting. Sounds like there's some of the best work is ahead, and excited for to provide our listeners maybe even a little sneak peek about what's ahead for the industry leader of data movement, and of course we went over those examples of that you're powering real-time analytics and insights and AI, which is just breaking the surface, or really that's all we're at right now. And we could have another conversation in 5 years about what that's going to look like. But yeah, would love to know from your perspective, not only being a leader in this space, but having a great company that is at the forefront of all of this and all data. What's next for Fivetran and in the months to come?
Yeah, Connor, it's a great question. In one sense, I think what has made us successful is the fact that we are, best in breed at one particular piece of our customers' data stack. We don't try to do everything. We really try to focus on being the best at replication for our customers to use to get data from any place that they have on the planet into a central data location for them, or data platform for them. And so typically what that means is, like, I want more sources, I want more speed, I want more throughput, I want more reliability. And so we just continue to invest in that same thing over and over again, because the faster we can move data, the more reliable we can move data, the more workloads that our customers then unlock with that, because they can do, like the workloads can go from, I'm just trying to do a daily dashboard, to I'm trying to make, a real-time recommendation engine for my customers that are on, a certain asset of ours, a certain application of ours, or whatever, right? And so in many ways, we're just continuing to do the same thing we've been doing the last 12 years, because I think we still have a long way to go to continue to support our customers in everything that they need to do. I will say that we have an exciting new deployment model for our product that will be launching later this fall, for replicating. It has like all the benefits of a managed service, but with the deployment, a deployment model sitting behind our customer's firewall, which makes it very easy to work with, but also very secure and very fast. So that's something that's coming. And then obviously we talked a little bit about the managed data lake offering that we now have, and I think there's still a lot more for that to mature overall in the space, and for us to continue to add more and more features and functionality around it. So those are some of the things that we're working on in the immediate time, and mostly just excited to be on the cutting edge and be working with so many great brands across the globe in helping them make the most out of their data.
Well, you are, and I appreciate you taking the time out to share that with us. And for those listening, it's great to not only bring on great solution providers, but that's something that Millennium prides itself on, bringing great solutions to those who need it most. Moving data and powering innovation, and that's Fivetran. Thank you so much to Taylor Brown, the co-founder and chief operating officer of Fivetran, for taking the time out of your day to join the Millennium Live podcast. And thank you to our listeners for listening to another episode. Stay tuned for more.